You couldn't live in Portobello and not be interested in looking out your front door and looking at the sea and looking at the sky and looking at the land. And it's the relationship between these three elements of sea, sky and land that is fascinating.
365 days a year, apart from funerals or weddings, John will be wearing his shorts. What a contrast, because I'm usually all bundled up with a big Arctic coat.
Every morning I come down and the first thing I do is I open the storm doors. It's one of my favourite moments of the day because I'll stand for 2 or 3 minutes and just look out at the sea or the sky. There's always something happens. It's a landscape that's forever changing, so no matter what time of the year, what time of the day, opening those doors to look out is a real pleasure.
The entrance hall is fantastic. We can look from the glass door right to the sea, and we installed this plain glass door. When we bought the house, there were bubble glass squares all over the door and side window, and it made it impossible for us to see out clearly, and why would you cover that view? And so in fact, it was John's nephew who came and installed the plain glass in the door. And that brings so much light in the morning and always gives us a view. One of the first things that impressed us was, the initial impact of coming into the house, unfortunately, was the little vestibule before coming into the hallway. And that was really intact and Victoriana. The gorgeous wall tiles, deep kind of russet colours, gave a wonderful impact. We have 4 bedrooms. One's a study where Joan works 3 days a week. And we have, obviously, the amazing view from our bedroom. We start the morning every day with a cup of tea in bed, which sounds lazy, and maybe it is partly, but it's also to open the shutters and to sit with a cup of tea, just admiring the sea.
We had a whole variety of door handles. Some were wooden, some were metal, some were brass, some were stainless steel. It looked odd. So one of the things we agreed that we should actually try and have the same type of door handle throughout the house. And we went for ones that have a glass feel to them, and actually they're perfect for the house because they actually reflect the light coming in from either the front or the back.
John's niece at the time had a friend who was a graffiti artist. He actually came and graffiti our kitchen. And so we asked if he could produce a canvas for us. Kieran, John's niece's friend, set about producing this masterpiece, and it has lived in every house with us. It's just bubbling with colour and life, and it cheers me up every time I look at it. It always has a pride of place. It takes up a whole wall, and every time we look at it, it reminds us of the journey we've come. One of the most spectacular features of the house has to be its ceilings, both in the upstairs bedroom and in the downstairs living room. I mean, particularly the bedroom. When you gaze up at the ceiling, it's actually a work of art. And it's a 1930s technique, which incredibly makes it almost 100 years old, of wallpaper, plaster casted over. And the design is appropriately shells and birds, but very exotic birds. I don't think you'd find them on the beach around here.
In terms of creating and painting or making, you have to be quite disciplined, and I try to discipline myself. So I'll be in the garage or workshop, to give it its posh name, from about 8 o'clock, 8:30 onwards, and I'll do a couple of hours, then come in for coffee with Joan, and then go back out. For a long time, it was never ever used for painting and creating. It was simply a place where we stored family items, furniture, and my motorbike was actually stored there. So when I became interested in making things, it was a bit of a rigmarole. I had to take my motorbike out of the garage and then go in and actually do some painting. About 8 years ago, we decided that we would get rid of the motorbike, and then we created the garage into a bit more of a workshop space. It's limited. It wouldn't be an artist studio by any stretch of imagination because there's no natural light. But the front door opens into the lane, and there's something very nice about the immediacy between your work and the people who wander by. I get strangers who sometimes get lost and will stop and say, can I get to the beach from here? And then they'll say, what are you doing? And then you get into a conversation with complete strangers about what you're making or what you're creating.
John has always been creative. What I really admire about John is the way he has developed his clear talent as an artist, someone who can produce and create beautiful things.
If you're a professional artist, you might be more fragile in terms of people criticising your work or not liking it, and I can understand that if this is your life. Whereas for me, it's something I'm passionate about and interested in, but if people don't like it, that's all right.
One of my favourite pieces of John's art is a very stunning assemblage. It's one that I refuse to let go of. I love the textures. I love the layers. I love the shape, and I adore the colours, the very vibrant colours. And it has pride of place in our kitchen, and it will stay there as long as we are in this house. We have a large lounge overlooking the sea, and when we bought the house, we decided it needed an original fireplace to go with the lounge because there wasn't one. There was a little stove when we bought the house, so we installed the fireplace. And I think that makes it feel much more, apart from much more homely, but much more in keeping with the age and style of the house. And those fantastic Victorian windows, we felt we didn't want to drape with curtains. And so we installed shutters. And the shutters, when they open, the sunlight beams through and creates a lovely light in the room. We didn't want to go for carpets because the original floorboards were there, although over time we have replaced those. Many people have changed the purpose of the dining room or indeed knocked the walls through to create a huge diner kitchen, but particularly John has always been insistent that it remains a dining room. And although I kind of wondered whether that really was the right thing to do, in the end, I agree with him, because we can shut the world away and the messy kitchen and have friends round the dining table. We did change the kitchen dramatically, and in fact, I think we're on our third kitchen, but this is the last one. But John says that's depressing, so I've not to say that.
Lots of the pictures here are not mine. Most have been bought at the art college, but a couple have actually been bought on eBay, and one of my favourite pieces, a large piece in the front room, was actually bought that way. I put a bid in and I couldn't believe I got it for that amount of money. For me, it felt like theft. It was a beautiful piece of work for which I thought I was actually paying literally pennies. I paid more to have it transported from a gallery in London than I did for the piece itself. So this is daylight robbery. The only thing I did to that particular piece is I put some LED lighting behind it, and it's now, I think, a wonderful relationship between the light behind and the form of the piece itself. When we were redesigning the boys' upstairs bedroom, getting actually a wardrobe has always been a problem. We had an IKEA one, it just didn't look right. So we actually got my nephew, who's a carpenter, to build us a birch wardrobe, which we just wanted to be nice and simple, so you can actually, when you see it, it's just plain birch wood with two holes where you put your fingers in to slide the doors along. And inside is shelved and there's pull-out drawers. For us, it was a perfect fit to have this plain but elegant wardrobe in our son's room, but more importantly, it was actually made by my nephew. COVID was hard for many folk who worked in a corner, who worked under the stair, but I actually had a wonderful study with a view out the window. We recognise we're blessed. We also realise that during hard times we maybe had it easier than most because of the location of this house. It's actually the perfect size of room for a study. It's quite compact, but it allows you to have everything to hand. I work 3 days a week, and it just shows you how even an old Victorian house can be modernised and keep up with technology. So I go to some meetings face-to-face, but most of the meetings now are conducted on MS Teams. I use my laptop and desktop for most of the work I do. But I'm also incredibly fortunate that when I'm in meetings, I can look out the window and I've got this fantastic view out to the sea. And some people who know say, well, what's the weather like by you and what's happening in the beach today, Joan?
Portobello can be described as a village in the city. It always has had its own character and its own pulse. We feel very lucky, very blessed that we have this just on our doorstep.